This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to the Great Love Debate, the world's number one dating and relationship podcast. Since 2015, we are here in the fine, lovely studios of Pod Populi Podcasts for the people. And I am very excited about this episode. It is a tradition. It is a tradition unlike any other. Time magazine has its Person of the Year. People magazine has its Sexiest Man Alive, which I do not win. Sports Illustrated has its swimsuit issue, but no reveal has quite the eager annual anticipation as our announcing of America's worst cities to find love. And that's going to be the bulk of this episode today, and we will get into that in just a second. We have a brand new number one this year. It is a truly barren wasteland of the heart. But I wanted to open up just a kind of a quick thought up top to put a little exclamation point on the last episode we did, which I got a bunch of good feedback on. Went in a lot of different directions, but it made sense to most people. And in that episode, we touched on a lot of basic human emotions and feelings and reactions. And I was listening to another podcast the other day. It was actually Bill Simmons' podcast, fellow Holy Cross graduate, and his show is mostly about sports, but it also deals in pop culture and business and a few other things. And he asked his guest, who was a CEO of a big company, and he asked his guest, who are you jealous of? And I thought it was a good question. And the person asking that question now is going to be like, wait, what? But I think it's a good question because before somebody even gets to answering the question, they have to think about how that question makes them feel. And if you're going to ask that, or if you are the person who is asked that, you're initially probably going to be taken back. You're quickly going to put your guard up and get a little defensive. Like, what? Why do you say that? Because jealousy is thought to be a bad quality, usually. And by asking someone who they are jealous of, you're basically telling the person that they are, in fact, jealous. So he didn't ask who you were envious of. I wish I had what they have. And the difference between jealousy and envy is kind of subtle, but there's some distinct things that make them separate. Jealousy often involves a bit of resentment and often anger towards the other person or situation. Envy is more of a negative feeling, but it's more like a mix of admiration and discontent. But I think owning that you have it, jealousy or those feelings, is a really good thing if you take the time to break them down. What is it about who they are, what they do, how they do it, or what they have is something that I would like to have? What is it about those things? So you don't look at it as, I want to take it from them and give it to me. It's what are the qualities and characteristics of another person or a situation that I would like to implement into myself or my own existence. I like how organized they are. I like the way things just roll off their back and she never gets too down. I like the way they are confident or creative at unusual times or points or circumstances. I like the way those two communicate with each other. So it's not, how come they get to have a giant boat and I have to work 6 jobs? It's not that. It's about my situation and what about my situation can I change or shift to get me a little closer to the feeling that that boat gives that person. Because honestly, laying around on a boat, it can be boring, and lonely, but it is peaceful. So you're sort of jealous of the feeling of peace. And then you got to ask yourself, well, how can I find peace? Moments or whole days of peace, especially you parents out there. How can I find calm, relaxation? Because everyone can have those things. So it's about having the same things that the boat gives that person in your own way or world. Everyone can create windows for those things. I wish I looked like him. I wish I had her clothes. Break that down. Break those two things down. What would looking like him do for you? How would that change your life? What would be different and what would you achieve if you did look like him? And are there alternative routes to getting or feeling those things without looking like him? And if you ask yourself these things, there are. That's the answer. There always are, and that's the way you have to look at it. Why does she get all the attention? Well, what is it about the attention that you actually want? And if you suddenly had all the attention, how would that change things? And you can ask that of your kids if you have kids too. A lot of kids always want the attention. What is it about the attention that you want? And if I give you all the attention, how does that really change things for you? So I think the jealousy concept is a good question because when you take the sting out of it and all the emotion out of it and get into the roots of it, it's a really good exercise of self-analysis. Not what do I feel this about or who do I feel this towards, but why do I feel this at all? And how can those feelings actually help me to make a change or take a stand to living differently or having different things that might not have previously been available to me if I didn't think they were available to me. So I had to think about it for myself. Like, do I want somebody else's life? I do not. Do I want somebody else's house or car or wife or girlfriend? I definitely do not. Do I want somebody's patience or kindness or organizational skills or communication abilities? I absolutely should want those things, and I hope I do. I hope I look at those things and be like, God, I wish I could be like that and talk, because I think those are good things. Because then it would be, how would my life be better, and how would those around me be benefited by those things being better and me making those enhancements and improvements? And then answering that question, it's an exercise of, trying to find those examples. And instead of saying, oh, I wish I were them or I want to be them, you look at them as role models or roadmaps to getting those things. I want what they have, but in a positive way. I think it helps. I thought it's a good question. I think it helps. I think it matters. I think it's a good exercise to sort of do for yourself. And I thought it sort of put a little bow on what we talked about in the last one. So now that we got that bit of positivity out of the way, do we have a treat for you, great love listeners. As promised, hot off the presses, we have been crunching the numbers and double checking the data. And today, finally, we are going to release the 2022 list of America's worst cities to find love, including a brand new number one. That's called a tease. And we will get into all of it right after this. And we are back. And if I'm like a little bit winded here, I have a broken rib yet again. So I'm playing hurt here. I'm doing it for you, great love people, great love audience. But it kicks things off. We always have caveats and qualifiers. We were a little hesitant last year to put out this list because so many situations were so fucked up, and how places handled those situations should absolutely be factored in. If you live in a city with, shitty public officials, that's going to affect a lot of things, including dating. If you live in a city where last call's at 8:00, and that's a city ordinance, it's going to affect your dating. If you live in a place where all the restaurants close down because of whatever, lots of things, that's going to affect a lot of things, including dating. But this list, these cities, they would suck for love, dating, relationships, no matter what the circumstances are. Not all of them were on last year's list or the year before, but all of these 10, I looked at it, have been on one of the 8 lists we have put out in 8 previous years. And that's not just because we're lazy and we're just turning the list. It's because these cities have deep-rooted problems when it comes to dating. Certain cities fell off the list. San Diego fell off the list. I don't need to get into why the ones fall off the list, but they did. The cities need to be more like Atlanta, which in under 5 years' time went from being on our top 10 worst list to being in our top 10 best list. A lot of that had to do with us. We did a lot of media convincing the people that the myth, the urban legend that there were 6-to-1 women to men ratio in Atlanta was absolute nonsense. It was not true. It was put out there by some pretty prominent personalities, and we debunked it, and people were like, oh, wow, can't blame that. And then they got into it, and Atlanta has improved in a lot of different ways. A lot of good neighborhoods, a lot of fun. But this is not the day for that. Props to you, Atlanta, and your Southern hospitality at work. But we're not here for that today. We're here for the worst. As we say every year, when we put this list out, it doesn't mean that there is zero hope in these places. You can obviously find love anywhere at any time. It only takes one moment, and it only takes one encounter with one person. So keep hope alive if your city's on this list. And the other thing about this list is that they're all major cities. They're all big cities. So when people tell me, no, it has to be worse in small town Indiana, I mean, maybe not. We don't take our tour to small town Indiana. Is there a small town Indiana outside of John Mellencamp's world? There's probably a lot of small towns in Indiana, but we're not dealing with small town Indiana. The point is that major cities include millions of people, and in millions of people, you're going to find quite a few that if you connected with them, you would and could and should absolutely fall in love. So that's the silver lining in this old rusted bucket here. And the other thing, one more thing, sometimes people get confused about cities having lots to do being a good thing for dating. And sometimes, but not necessarily, lots of places have lots to do. Spoiler alert, New York is going to be on this list. And New York has lots to do. Doesn't mean it's easy to do those lots of things, and it doesn't mean it's filled with people you want to do it with. And one of the best things that has come out of, a turbulent last couple of years is that a lot of people are relocating and looking at different alternatives to where they want to spend their time. The single most important decision you make in your life, big picture, is where you live. That affects what you do for work. That affects who you fall in love with. That affects where you live. And I'm amazed at how many people give that no thought whatsoever. They're lazy about it. It's like, I know some people here. I grew up here. My parents live here. My family, they don't give it any thought whatsoever. And it's insane to me. You really need to think about where you live or where you want to live or where you can live. And you've heard me say before that I believe everyone needs to move at least 700 miles every 7 years. Unless there's some really severe extenuating circumstances where you can't do that, and most of you can do that, 700 miles every 7 years. I stand by it. It's healthy. You will live a more, and I didn't always, trust me, I didn't practice this either. I lived in a lot of places for longer than that, and that was a mistake. Looking back, I'm like, I wish I didn't do that. You will live a more fulfilled and connected life if you move 4 to 5 times in your life. Significant moves, not from here to there, from here to way over there, 700 miles. Because you got to stop kicking around the same sandbox, which many of us do for decades. We get comfortable, we like what we know, we recognize the familiar, blah, blah, blah. And many, many people are relocating or thinking about relocating, and not just to Nashville and Tucson and lots of places in Florida that you hear about on the news. They're also, relocating to Nevada and New Mexico and Montana and all sorts of new places and greener pastures that you probably wouldn't have. Cleveland, Ohio, a lot of people are moving there too. New places and greener pastures that you might not have thought of before. All of that is a good thing. The other common quality on this list, for the most part, is that 8 of the cities on it I would describe as being unhappy places. Whether or not we're even talking about dating, just unhappy group of people. Overall, life is hard and dreary and cloudy, and that definitely puts an added stress on quality of life and day-to-day operations. And if people are unhappy, they are far less likely to date or to be somebody you want to date. So look around you. Go outside, hit pause, go outside, take a walk around your neighborhood. Are people smiling where you live? Do you hear laughing where you live? do people say hello and good morning and thank you and yes, please, and may I help you carry that? And again, I am not hello, good morning, thank you, yes, please, but I certainly want to be around those people.